This book is about existence in its purest, most brutal form. Yeah, I can get behind that. So today I want to talk about my most recent read, I Who Have Never Known Man by Jacqueline Harpman. I want to go through some of the theories, the themes, the topics, all the questions that I have still, all the questions that were never answered in the book. That being said, consider this your disclaimer now. There may be some spoilers in the book. But also, can there really be spoilers in a book when there was that many unanswered questions? I Who Have Never Known Man is really more of a philosophical thought experiment than our traditional dystopian book. The main reason being that there is so many unanswered questions. The book just keeps going question after question with no real conclusion in it. A rough rundown of the plot is our protagonist is an unnamed female character. We don't know her name, we don't know how she got into captivity, but she's being held in a cell with 39 other women. And this cell is being monitored by 3 guards, and the guards will rotate through. We don't communicate with them. We don't really know anything about them. Until one day the siren goes off, and the guards are actually down at the cell with the women at the time that it goes off. They drop the key to the cell, and they flee. The women manage to grab the key, unlock it, and they escape. But when they get up above ground, they realize they don't actually know where they are. They can't see anything around them. They end up walking for months and years and find no trace of civilization. Honestly, the deciding factor on if you are gonna like this book is if you can handle the fact that there's no answers. If you need your storytelling to have beginning, climax, and ending, this book isn't for you. You are not gonna love it. That being said, I am one of those people. So this book only got 3 stars for me. Just because I wanted conclusions, I wanted answers. That's what I love in a book. But that being said, there is still a lot to discuss in this book. Okay, so I've broken this down into questions because what better way to do that with the book that has so many questions? So our first question is, does this book need answers? We're not talking personal preference. We're talking, does not having answers take away from the format of the book? There are so many unanswered questions in this book, and if I just want to name a few, why are the women imprisoned? Who imprisoned them? Where are they? And what caused the alarm? Those are just the first few that come to mind. There is a ton more, but those are just the basic ones. But do these questions really strengthen the novel? Well, if you want to market it as a mystery, no. But guess what? It's not marketed as a mystery. It's marketed as a dystopian novel. Personally, I would put slash philosophy on there or something, because the book, its job is to analyze and provoke questions. If the author wanted answers, they would have put them in. This book was short enough. There was room to put them in, but they chose not to because the mystery wasn't the focus of the book. The focus was exploring humanity. When we look at it from this angle, suddenly there's a lot less unanswered questions. We read about this individual who has no previous social constructs. They have grown up in captivity. Anything they've learned has been done in captivity. They have no education, they have no culture, they have no memories. You can see the distinct difference between our protagonist and the other woman who have memories to refer to. But when you remove everything, what does she still develop? She's still got her curiosity, her empathy, and her morality. So this captivity experiment, is it really testing what happens when you take everything that society has to offer away? What remains of our humanity? Question number 2. Are the memories a burden or a gift? One of the main differences between our protagonist and the other woman is the other women have memories. They have a life that they refer to, a life full of fond times and how things used to be. And then we look at our protagonist and she has nothing. She only knows captivity. And you really have to stop and think, is that a blessing or a curse? You look at the other woman, and there's a point where the narrator asks them about their children. And many of them are moms. Many of them had children in the past life, but they don't like talking about them because they don't like thinking, what happened to my child? Where are they now? You wonder if ignorance is really bliss in this case. Question number 3, loneliness versus solitude. Our protagonist grows up with 39 other women, but she never feels like one of them. Even when she's with them, she still feels alone. And then at one point in the book, she truly is alone. And you have to wonder, which is worse? In my opinion, she truly thrived when she was alone. She was allowed to let her curiosity lead her, and I feel like the weight of the others were kind of bringing her down. When you look at the others, they were happy staying put. Once they had a camp, they wanted to stay. Our protagonist was not happy with that. She was always needing to explore or needing to create. They never really connected as a group, and I felt like she was finally free once they were gone. This ties into one of our main themes in the book, curiosity. This is the main driving factor behind the story. It's actually even the reason that we are still reading. It is the defining quality of our protagonist and often what separates her from the others. Now, after all that being said, I do have a quote that kind of contradicts it a little bit. And that one is, "I was forced to acknowledge too late, much too late, that I too had loved and I was capable of suffering and that I was human after all." So my point isn't that she didn't have any loss or grief, it's that it kind of hit her much later in life. Question number 4, we've got freedom versus purpose. Was freedom the actual goal for the woman? Once they're in captivity, they're dreaming of freedom, or at least they claim they are. But are they really dreaming of freedom, or are they dreaming of what life used to be? Once the narrator escapes, they seem a little bit disappointed. It almost feels like they switched one cell for another. The physical cell, and then another prison is outside. So maybe it wasn't freedom that they were yearning for, it was purpose. And don't get me wrong, obviously outside is better than in the cell, but outside was just a different version of a prison. It had more responsibilities and it had more choices and they were in more control, but it still felt limiting to her. And that leads us to our sub-question on that is, who is the freest person in the novel? I'm going to go with the protagonist, because the older women, they are prisoners of their memories. The guards are prisoners of their duty. And I think our protagonist, while she may physically be a prisoner, mentally she's free. And it leads you to question, are the greatest prisons internal or external? Question number 5, why does our narrator not have a name? Everybody else has a name in this book. Why did the other woman not name her? Why has she not given a name to herself? Honestly, there's probably a reason behind this, and there's a couple of different interpretations. Firstly, is that remaining nameless means that she could be anybody. She can represent every human and every reader. Or not giving her a name means that she has no identity outside of observation. Those are my 2 ideas. Please leave other ones, because I'm not 100% set on either of them. Question number 6, if the guards spoke, how much would that change the story? We don't see the guards speak. They never speak. They are spoken to, but they never reply. And so you kind of wonder, are they also victims? Are they villains? Or are they merely just tools? I would say 110% having the guards speak in this book would change the whole novel. It would not only be giving us more information and more answers, but I feel like by doing that, the book would no longer be about observation. Now, I don't know how many of you actually bothered to read the afterword or if it was even included in your edition, but mine had one. And I thought it actually provided a lot of insight into the author's mind, and I'm really glad that I read it. So I have a couple of thoughts on it. First of all, our author is Jewish. You may have assumed this, maybe you didn't even know. But it doesn't surprise me because throughout the book, you can actually see multiple references to concentration camps. And the confusion that the Jewish had was also being mirrored in the women. They don't know what's happening inside, and guess what? They don't even know what's happening outside either. So I feel like that was a really interesting Easter egg in the book. The book also does question whether they could be on an alien planet. I don't know if their reasoning is that Earth could never be so cruel, yet here we are referencing a historical event as inspiration, so clearly that is not the case. However, they may have kept to the storyline of alien planet just to keep when they escaped completely unknown, so that none of the elements were recognizable. The afterword does mention that this isn't exactly a popular book, and I would disagree. I feel like it's got a lot of traction in the last couple years, and when I was going through TikTok, it seemed to be on everyone's recommendation list. I would say that maybe it's not enjoyed by a larger group of people, and I think that's really just the lack of answers in the book. Now, I did actually go through some of the review section on Goodreads and some other sites just to kind of see how other people were enjoying the book. And honestly, the majority of people who gave it a poor rating, it was just due to the lack of answers. So I do have a bit of a mixed bag reviews that I'd like to share. Our first one is a 5-star. This isn't the kind of book that's here to comfort. It's dark, bleak, and terrifying, yet also profound. It made me sit in discomfort and confront survival, freedom, and what it even means to live. The silence about what happened to the world is louder than any dystopian world building ever could be. And at first, I wanted explanations, the why, the rules of this world. But the more I read, the more I realized that the silence is the whole point of the story. If you're on the hunt for a happily ever after, you might want to look elsewhere, because this book doesn't do redemption or catharsis or answers. What we do get is a meditation on what's left, and everything we think that makes us human, such as love, connection, and hope, is stripped away. By the time we turned to the last page, I was left reeling and grappling with the enormity of my own insignificance. It's frustrating, haunting, and unforgettable. It was funny because one of the reviews right under that was like 2.5 stars. And it's like, spoiler, but you should take the title of the book very literally, because she really has never and will never know man or know anything, and neither will we. I was actually so mad. That one was really funny. Okay, so I'm gonna put Madison's video here. I actually instantly followed her because I loved this idea that she did.
Episode 1, I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna give you my fresh off the dome thoughts that I literally wrote in my journal immediately after finishing this book. I'll take a break, scroll on TikTok, see what other people are saying, and then figure out if those thoughts that I had are validated or challenged by the internet. The goal is for me to get back to a place where I can actually develop my own thoughts and opinions on a piece of literature before going to the masses to see what other people are saying. And with that, let's get into it. Okay, when I first picked up this book, I assumed it was going to be a piece of feminist literature. Hello, the title, I Who Have Never Known Men. It's kind of giving contemporary feminist literature. The more I was reading, the more I was like, oh, I actually don't think this is a piece of like inherently feminist work. One of the scenes that made me think this was when our ensemble of characters are out and about in the real world, quote unquote. They're going bunker to bunker and they come across a bunker of all men. Yeah. And this isn't the only bunker that they end up coming across of all men.
That is exactly when I dropped my idea too.
The men in this world are just as likely to find themselves in this predicament that the women find themselves. We just happen to be dropped into the story through the female experience, the female perspective. Meanwhile, like, the men are having similar, if potentially parallel experiences. This book just isn't about their perspective. While I do think that a core theme of this book was about women and a society of women and what it looks like, acts like, sounds like, feels like in a non-patriarchal world where they are true matriarchs and they are developing their own society, that was definitely a central guiding theme to the book. I don't think that at its core it was a piece of feminist literature. I don't think wrap my head around it, but it's not quite there. I also think something that was really interesting brought up in this book was the idea of time, and specifically the human construct of time and potential intersections between time and humanity. One of the questions I walked away with was like, okay, what is the human construct of time? So minutes, hours, days, months, whatever. If not a tool to get us from one point of human connection to the other. Like, if you completely remove that human connection, does time even matter? Anyways, those were my initial gut reactions to the book. I really enjoyed it.
I'm going to pause it there. She goes on and does a little bit of scrolling herself, but that's what I'm doing right now exactly, is scrolling. I think the time that she mentioned is super interesting. There is one point where the main character is actually just timing her heartbeat, like counting her heartbeats to know how much time has passed. So that is actually something super interesting that I didn't discuss, but I really like her take on it, and I would like to hear a little bit more about it. So if that was something that you read in this book and kind of interests you, or maybe you've got some ideas about it, leave it in the comments. But definitely like that creator. I followed her as soon as I watched that video. I was like, you know what? That is a great idea. I also found this TikTok here going over some of the top quotes of the book, and I think a lot of people enjoyed that as well. Summing everything up, I feel like this book really depends on the quotes and observation. There's a lot of hard-hitting quotes in this book, but there's also a lot left unsaid that you just kind of need to pull from the context. So I feel like your opinion on that is going to decide 100% whether or not you like this book. While it wasn't one of my favorite books, I wouldn't 100% write it off for people. I would still recommend it to some. It really depends. Like, if you are one of the people that needs that storytelling with the beginning, the climax, and the conclusion, this is not for you. If that isn't you, this actually could be like your favorite book of the year. Now, please leave down below any topics or themes that I missed. I'm sure there's a lot of them, and I'd love to read them. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this video or if you enjoy book-related content, be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you can see the next time that I post a video. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.